Today on Sugar's Fun Run, I'll be showing you how to make a homemade chocolate Texas sheet cake. Hey everyone, Sam here, and I am so excited to be sharing my take on classic Texas sheet cake with you. This cake is a chocolate lover's dream, and I've done a few things with the classic recipe to make it extra special. We are turning up the moistness of this cake because we're going to be using a little bit of brown sugar instead of just white sugar. We are cranking up that chocolatey flavor, and I've done a few other little things too to really make this cake the best it could possibly be. I think you're really going to love it. Now, to get started, you're going to want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, you'll grab a medium-sized saucepan, and let's head over to our stovetop. The first ingredient you're going to need is 1 cup of unsalted butter. You're going to want to cut this into pieces, about tablespoon-sized pieces, and we're going to add this to our saucepan. We're also going to add 1 cup of water and 1/3 cup of natural cocoa powder. Now at this point, you'll just want to turn your stovetop heat to low, and we're just going to stir everything together until the butter is melted. Once your butter is melted, you'll want to turn the stovetop heat up to medium, and we're going to bring this mixture to a boil. You'll just want to stir it occasionally until it comes to a boil. All right, once everything is boiling, we're just gonna take this off of the heat. We're gonna let it sit for about 15 to 20 minutes and let it cool down a little bit. While that's cooling, we can go ahead and grab a medium to large size bowl, and we can start preparing the rest of our ingredients. We're going to add 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1.5 cups of granulated sugar, and I'm also using a 1/2 cup of firmly packed light brown sugar. This is one of those key ingredients I mentioned earlier that's going to help add a little extra moisture, a little extra flavor, helps make this Texas sheet cake a little extra good. We'll also add a teaspoon of baking soda, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, and just a 1/2 teaspoon of instant coffee. Now this is optional, but again, it's one of those ingredients that really helps bring out that chocolate flavor. You'll just want to stir everything together. I'm just going to use a whisk to whisk everything together until it's nicely combined. Now once everything is nicely mixed together, you're going to need another bowl. You're going to want it to be pretty big because we're going to be combining everything in this bowl. Here we're going to be whisking together a 1/2 cup of sour cream, 2 large room temperature eggs, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Just gonna use my whisk. This is the same whisk I used for my flour mixture, and I'm just gonna whisk everything together until it's nicely combined. Now once you have everything nicely combined here, we're going to add our dry ingredients or our flour mixture into our sour cream mixture. It is a lot of dry ingredients to wet. The ratio is pretty high here. Don't worry, just get everything as nicely combined as you can. Once we add our chocolate mixture, it's going to be a much smoother, more liquidy batter. I just like to do this in 2 or 3 parts. It just makes it a little easier to get everything well combined. And it's getting pretty stiff here, so I'm going to switch over to a spatula now rather than bend up my whisk. So once you have everything nicely combined, we can go ahead and grab our melted chocolate mixture. Now you do want to make sure this has had at least 15 to 20 minutes to cool, and then we're just going to pour it in and we're going to work everything together until we have a nice cake batter. Now it is going to take a minute to get everything nicely combined here. You want to be careful because even though we've let that chocolate mixture cool for about 15-20 minutes now, it is still kind of hot. You don't want to splash yourself with it. But we have this thick, almost dough-like cake batter that we're adding a very thin chocolate liquid mixture to. So just take a little bit of time to stir everything together carefully, and you want to stir until you have a nice, smooth, even batter. It should all be just one consistency all the way throughout. All right, so this is looking pretty good. We have a nice even consistency. There are no lumps of batter on the bottom. There's no liquid settling at the top. So we are ready to bake our Texas sheet cake. Now we are going to be baking this in a 10 by 15 inch jelly roll pan, and you're going to want to either grease and flour the bottom and sides of this pan or spray it with a baking spray. And if you use a baking spray, make sure it's one that's made with flour. You don't want to just use like a canola oil or vegetable oil spray. All right, let's take this over to our 350-degree Fahrenheit oven, where it's going to need to bake for about 18 to 22 minutes, or until a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean or with a few moist crumbs. Now, every good Texas sheet cake needs a good chocolate frosting. We're going to want to pour our frosting over the cake while it's still warm. So about 10 minutes or even 5 minutes before the cake is finished baking, I like to begin prepping my frosting. Now, to do this, we're going to head back over to our stovetop. You're going to need another medium-sized saucepan. Now, to this saucepan, we are going to be adding 1/2 cup or 1 stick of butter. I like to use salted butter here in this recipe, but if you only have unsalted, you can just add a pinch of salt in along with this. We're also going to be adding 6 tablespoons of milk. We're going to combine everything in our saucepan and just stir it over medium heat until the butter is completely melted and our butter and milk mixture is nice and smooth. Now, once your butter has melted, we'll remove that saucepan from the heat, and we're going to whisk in 6 tablespoons of natural cocoa powder. We're also going to add in 3/4 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and you'll need 4 cups of powdered sugar. Now, to prevent any lumps that might form in your frosting, you can go ahead and sift this after you measure it if you'd like. I usually skip this step just because I don't feel like it and because most of the lumps are going to work themselves out, but that's your call. Now, I'm just going to add this gradually, about in 3 or 4 parts. So we can actually go ahead and add our frosting on top of the cake. You do want to add it while the cake is still warm, and you don't want to let that frosting get hard while it's sitting in the saucepan. If it does start to firm up a little bit while you're waiting, like if it finishes a couple minutes before your cake does, you can just go ahead and whisk it, and that should make it nice and fluid and flowy for you again. You'll want to use a spatula. I like to use an icing spatula just to make sure that frosting goes all the way to the edges, covers all the corners, and so that you have a nice even layer over your cake. Now, some people like to add chopped pecans or walnuts over their cake. Now, if you want to do that, you want to add them while the frosting is still warm. So you want to do it like at this point is when you'd want to add them. I personally don't, well, the people I'm feeding this to don't really like nuts, so we're going to go nut-free today. The only thing left to do at this point is let this cake sit, let the frosting harden before we go ahead and dig in. Now, I'm a little premature here. I didn't give this cake a full hour because I don't have the patience. If you could smell what I'm smelling right now, you would totally get it. So it's a little bit messy, but it's going to be worth it. Oh yeah, this is still definitely a little bit warm, but it looks so good. It's so fudgy. I don't know if you can see the interior. I'm so excited to dig in, and I'm excited for you to try this recipe out and let me know what you think. Please, if you do try it, leave me a comment because I always love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Guys. I could eat this whole thing by myself. So rich, so chocolatey. You're gonna love it.